Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth in the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case. Just another dead girl underwater. Trigger. Warning. Implications of death, violence, and sexual harassment. By the time the fisherman finds me, I will have been dead for 33 hours, 6 minutes, and 29 seconds. 18 hours since the police declared me missing. 15 hours since Zoe told my biology teacher that my tent was empty, that I hadn't returned from the party we'd snuck out to the night before. Careful, quiet, every twig a possible snitch. It was exhilarating, our hearts pounding, the smell of pine and seaweed thick in the air, and the moon a perfectly curved sickle. Zoe held my sweaty hand and didn't let go until we'd passed the tents and joined the others by the lake. The music on someone's phone was turned down just low enough for us to make out Billie Eilish's raspy voice. One of the guys offered us a beer, kept cool in the pitch-black, lurking water. I remember thinking I couldn't tell where the lake ended and the forest began. The first article published by a local newspaper reads, "Promising high school student missing after night, swim in lake." Shortly after, the Water Rescue Service and Fire Brigade take over the search. Dogs comb the area, their noses trailing through the damp earth. A human chain forms, people moving slowly through the woods, eyes scanning for any sign of me. Even a helicopter hovers overhead, its whirring blades slicing through the heavy, charged air. The search drags on for hours, stretching into the twilight, yet the woods remain silent. The police begin to ask questions. When was she last seen? What was she wearing? Had she been drinking? Did she seem out of character? Angry? Sad? Suicidal? No. No and no. She was singing. She was dancing. She seemed happy. When the fisherman finds my body, miles away from where I was last seen, certainty sets in. The autopsy reveals a hematoma on my head and purple spots behind my ears. The coroners examine the water in my lungs and confirm that I wasn't dead before entering the water. I died by drowning. My classmates are questioned again. Zoe claims to have left early, while I stayed behind with her twin brother, Tom, who has been in love with me since middle school. Tom's behavior strikes the police as odd. He insists he barely spoke to me, despite people seeing us leave the party together for a few minutes. When my body is examined, traces of Tom's skin are found on my clothes, trapped between the fabric layers. Still, Tom sticks to his story, perhaps because the truth would embarrass him for some reason. Or maybe he's just afraid of the questions that would follow, and the scrutiny that might come with them. Tom is right, in the broadest sense. We really only exchanged 3 or 4 sentences that night, but only because Tom's mouth was otherwise occupied with me. I had enjoyed every second of it, and looking back, I wish I'd given him a real chance. But I was too worried about what other people might think. So, as usual, I brushed him off, leaving him to walk away from the party feeling hurt. Cassandra insists she heard Zoe and me arguing that night, just before Zoe headed back to the campsite. According to her, we were fighting over Tom. Of course she would say that. What else would 2 girls argue about if not a boy? Cassandra even claims that Zoe pushed me, though Zoe denies it vehemently. She denies discussing Tom at all, insisting it was about something else, something that wouldn't come to light until much later, when our biology teacher became a suspect. but Cassandra holds firm to her version. The thing about Cassandra is that she's always been a shadow. The kind of girl whose name teachers forget after 2 weeks of spring break. Kelly? Cindy? Carrie? Something with a C though, right? So when she finally gets the chance to talk to the police and be part of the investigation, she jumps at it. Unfortunately, Cassandra isn't much help to the investigators. She leaves the party at 2 a.m., just 40 minutes before I die, leaving me alone with a group of guys who've brought along some tranquilizers. Sitting next to them felt like being stuck in a fever dream where Jacques Derrida explains quantum physics at a frat party. At some point, I decided it was time to head back. One of the guys casually asked if I needed someone to walk with me, and I said yes, but no one moved. I glanced back, the campsite faintly visible through the cold, white light filtering through the pines. It was only a few meters away, just beyond the trees. I'd walked this path for days, never once feeling threatened by the shadows in the bushes. But tonight, that sinking feeling in my stomach wouldn't go away. Still, I refused to be that girl, the one who got scared at every creak in the dark, the one who needed someone to hold her hand for a few steps. So I stood up and said I'd walk alone. Instead of sticking to the dark trail, though, I decided to take a small detour along the riverbank. A bit longer, a bit lighter, and hopefully a bit safer. One of the guys told me to text him when I made it to my tent. But when I didn't, no one even noticed. 16 days after my death, suspicion begins to shift toward our biology teacher. Devin, one of my classmates, reveals that he had felt ill that night and went looking for the teacher's tent, only to find it empty. Soon after, the teacher's behavior takes a strange turn. He starts making inconsistent statements that don't add up. One day, he calls Zoe into his office after class, where he insists that his earlier proposal to her before the trip had been nothing but a joke. She understood that, right? It was sarcasm, he says, claiming that what he really meant was that if she wanted to improve her grades, she should consider attending a tutoring service. And this is where Cassandra steps in for the final time. She confesses that she visited our biology teacher after the party, and that they went to the boathouse, where, according to her, nothing bad happened. He was just there for me. The biology teacher is immediately suspended, but the case against him has nothing to do with mine, as Cassandra's alibi clears him. Meanwhile, the suspicions surrounding Zoe and Tom are too weak to pursue. My case remains unsolved, and eventually, people begin to accept the idea that it was just a tragic accident, that I must have hit my head when I jumped into the water. They agree that I seemed unhappy, not just that night, but in general, and that my relationship with my parents, who expected me to excel in everything, was strained. Perhaps the pressure had finally got to her. It's all unsatisfying, of course. Unsatisfying for the local magazine, whose updates eventually dry up. Unsatisfying for the police, left with yet another unsolved case on their desk. Unsatisfying for my parents, who, decades later, will say in an interview that not a day goes by that they don't think of their little girl. Maybe one day a classmate will write a college essay about my case, reflecting on how it taught them that life can end in an instant. Maybe my story will end up on a true crime podcast, or perhaps Netflix will stretch it into a tightly structured 8-episode miniseries where my body is discovered just 3 minutes in. Enough time for viewers to decide if they'll keep watching. Or maybe none of this happens, and I'll fade away, like countless other women who are silenced every day, simply for being born the wrong sex. It doesn't matter who profits from my story. It doesn't even matter if they eventually find the two men I crossed paths with on my way back to the campsite, in the wrong place at the wrong time. None of this matters, because in the end, I'm just another dead girl underwater. Fall of the stars. The heavens glittered with stars as the man silently drove over dirt and gravel. The 1,000 twinkling eyes mocking his desperation, muttering a curse under his breath. He slowed down at the rusty security gate at the entrance of the abandoned mines. To an ordinary person, it would be a half-broken gate with just a couple of night guards sleeping their shift away. But then again, the average person wouldn't notice that the old equipment was strewn about almost too cleanly, or that the uniformed guards lacked an identity or a logo, or how a cold eye glinted from under the angled cap. A sleek gun pointed at any approaching vehicle. Private security, good. He smiled. He'd expected nothing less. He rolled down a window and casually brought up his right hand to scratch his stubble, flashing them the tattoo on his arm. One of guards came over to inspect it, shining a flashlight right in his face. Satisfied, he nodded to the other one, and the gate opened. The newcomer growled at them as he drove past. The guards didn't blink. He took the car to the mouth of the mines and parked it aside a vintage piece, tossing the keys inside when he got out. Won't be getting out in this ride, that's for sure. He took one last look at the night sky. The stars still winked at him. I'll show you, you damned twinklers, he thought. And then you and your glowing arses can collectively burn the fuck out. He walked in and took the narrow elevator down, fixing a crick in his neck to look at the small black camera from the corner of his eye. The caged door opened into a tunnel entrance sealed long ago. Dim light and vulgar music blared from within. The tunnel widened into a narrow hall within, a despicable den of sin. Sellers had set up their wooden stalls on either side, sporting wares of all kinds, and catering to the needs of anyone bold or foolish enough to venture within. A place fit for the lowest of low-life scum, the kind who'd kill their own mothers for the right price. Everything in the hall was as good as Eden's forbidden fruit on earth, attracting a number of fools who'd end up unconscious in dirty alleys, pickpocketed at best, missing an organ or an appendage, if not sporting a slit throat at worst. The market and its dealers had been thriving in the sealed mine for almost a decade now, and he had no doubt that even the poorest of these merchants could have half the law enforcement in their pockets. He grunted. Hell, half the buying and betting crowd out here was law enforcement. Drugs, flesh, poison, weapons. They themselves would know where best to find any product being sold in the dark hall. The man sighed and jammed a hand in his pocket, pulling out a pack of gum. He looked it over with a frown and popped one in his mouth, tossing the rest in a makeshift stall with a wink at the seller. Let him pore over hours, wondering what's so special about it. He allowed the thought to bring him a dry chuckle. Visibly relaxed now, he cleared his thoughts and covered the tattoo on his arm, lest it be discovered by someone who carried one of its counterparts. He'd thought about this evening too much to spend it in a petty black market fight, ignoring the purrs of a woman offering him the finest opium and a merchant sporting priceless stolen jewels. He made his way to the guarded room on the other end, where once again a discreet flash of his ink admitted him within. A flash of white greeted him on the other side. White tiles decked the room, save for the ceiling, which held a long mirror across the length of it. Across the table from him sat a red-faced man in a puff of smoke, cigar in one hand and a wicked blade in the other. A host of monitors beside him. Eye of the market. He leaned forward with his mouth split in a grin. Rivulets of sweat running down his temple into his short-cropped white hair. Welcome, my friend. Mr. Rasut, I presume? I'm Gwadiskvi. We spoke via our mutual contact, who sadly passed away today. He took his visitor's hand, shaking it and nodding. Tragic, really. But you know how it is. I was hoping you'd stop by this week. Give us a chance to talk in person. Yes, a conversation has been long due. The man called Rasut replied, pulling his hand back. He remained standing. Now, my friend, we are friends, yes? Heh. I would offer you a cigar, but unfortunately, I do not yet know if you are a friend. Let's save the cigar for later, then. A question for now. I heard from our friend Rihake you were taking an interest in the pits. You ask many questions, my friend. I must know now, because I dislike having to answer so many questions. Do you intend to partake in any way at all? Place a few bets, maybe indulge yourself in a match. Perhaps you'd like me to fix one for you, if only you're first to get you a little start. Say so. And we have a deal. I don't want to place bets, Gwadiskvi. His host's eyes narrowed, his smile faltering. Then you will understand. There are steps to be taken. We must be cautious about our little venture. You misunderstand, friend. He spat with a smile of his own. I wish to fight in the pits. The red-faced man barked a laugh, hurling his cigar across the room. Well then, my friend. We must drink to that, he shouted. I knew I liked you the moment you walked in. He poured out a strange green liquor in glass mugs kept behind his desk. Come, Mr. Rasut, we drink to victory, to living forever and battering one's enemies to death. The man called Rasut raked a hand through his dusty hair, clenching his fist at the drawn-out conversation. I do not drink before a fight. I will, however, take a whiff of your finest snow. Aye, it is a cold night, Mr. Rasut, and you are a bold one. He sniggered. My new friend, a man of taste. The man called Gwadiskvi obliged, immediately sending for his finest of the drug. He invited his guest to sit across him and talk. Come then, tell me. He grinned. What brings you here? Rasut tilted his head, starting. He was cut off. Please, do not insult my intelligence. I'm curious. The other man leaned forward. I truly am. Why would a man like you resort to this? He stared across the table, icily. You don't know me. Don't pretend to. But surely someone such as you would have noticed the shadows trailing you, yes? A giggle. They've been watching you. The way you walk, the way you talk, the much concealed desperation in your eyes. Maybe I have a death wish. But that's not the half of it, my dear Mr. Rasut, is it? His watery eyes gleamed, sending a shiver of revulsion down the addressed man's spine. Having a death wish doesn't have to be personal, he said quietly. Oh, but coming here always is. His drug came, and he consumed it, courtesy of the house. He rolled his neck, grasping at his colliding thoughts and the clarity he now had. He pulled out the battered old pocket watch. A half hour still remained before he'd fight. The man called Rasut suddenly realized that he was talking and stopped, visibly shaken. He found himself staring across at his half-witless host, who beseeched him to continue. You were at the bit where you had the epiphany after giving up your old ways, when the fighting was over. Go on then. He considered for a moment, then shrugged. No harm done. Screw it. It wouldn't matter after tonight, anyway. When it struck me, he spoke through the piece of gum still in his mouth. How much the stars and I are alike. Gwadiskvi hummed in appreciation. How poetic for a man of your bearing. But do tell, how so? It's silly, really, but also true. He snorted a scoff, waving his hand airily. When they die, it's got to be a cosmic carnage, or no one knows cares, because otherwise no one would know when they die. The other man spoke through a puff of smoke as he lit another cigar. Much like battle veterans and mercenaries, such as yourself, Yes, and the natural way is too mundane. He tasted the word on his tongue, and how morbid it felt. So, I thought, why not die in a carnage and make people care? Care? Gwadiskvi went silent for a long moment. Do you truthfully think the people enough to place bets, anyway? He retorted. The elder man undid a button on his shirt, rolling back his shoulders. Fair enough. You want to bring business to me? Who am I to refuse? my violent friend. A bolt of lightning went up his spine, and Rasut tilted his head. His host noticed it. Oh, come on. I've been running the pits for 9 years now. How many of your kind do you think I've seen? He huffed a laugh, thick smoke momentarily covering his face. I lost the count from not caring, Mr. Rasut, if I ever was honest. And you're simply another face in that pile. Men like you only like violence. Do you know why? He looked at him, very still, because it's the easiest thing to do. He continued, twirling the knife in his hand. So you go about your life, with violence as your creed, until suddenly, one day, you realize that you're all alone. So, what do? He said nothing, as the eyes across his bore into his own, with a cruel smile. You turn on yourself, becoming violent to life itself, hating your existence, and desperate for the bittersweet mercy the idea of death offers. Gwadiskvi looked into his eyes. And so, you turn to men like me. Like I said, Mr. Rasut, I recognize people like you. I think you'll find some kindred spirits in here this evening. Try to be merciful to them a little. Hee. He finished with a twinkle in his eyes, feeling uncomfortably vulnerable. He rode on a surge of blood and vaulted over the table in a blur, grabbing Gwadiskvi to whirl behind him, the knife now in his hand and held to his host. If you claim to know my motivations so well, then tell me, friend, he spat. Why don't I be a gentleman and grant you some mercy right now? The Mar laughed softly, feeling his own blade digging into his throat. I am trying to be polite, Mr. Rasut. But if you move that knife 1 inch closer to me, I will rip your heart out. Besides, we both know that you'd rather put on an impressive display. If you are so adamant on dying. Rasut released him, taking a step back. The pits are crowded tonight, Gwadiskvi remarked, with the eyes of a predator. Our old friend Rihak picked you a good night to fight. The fighting pits had been emptied, and a large area cleared for the closing event of the night. It was sparsely decorated, a handful of oil drums scattered to provide cover, and a few low-hanging bulbs as the only source of light in the wide hall. The crowd was brimming with nervous energy, with people shoving each other for the best spot to view the last fight without falling inside. Rules of the arena were clear. A single step in and you were fair game. The audience silently parted as its supreme benefactor glided through. Aitanpar Gwadiskvi, the man who ran the pits, and every piece of low-life scum that haunted the mines. He raised his arm, holding a glass of exquisite liquor, and the world fell silent. Greetings, children of the pits, he boomed. I have a special night in store for you. The matches till now have offered but a slice of the excitement to come. He looked at those who would fight now, spotting them in the audience. No life is better than half a life. Tonight, the 6 individuals gathered in the arena share more than blood brothers do in a lifetime. They share this thought and are willing to fight to the death to prove it. They are the superior people amongst us, for these men and women have looked into the eyes of desire and stared it down. Riches or luxury, a good, quiet life. That's too much to ask of them. They live for the combat, and for the combat they willingly die. Most of them, anyway. He trailed off. The crowd cheered. The man nodded and continued. We are graced with our weapons master, Mr. Black, offering us the chance to witness his latest wares in action. The crowd went wild, shrieks and whoops filling the air as the said man joined Gvadiskvi, completely decked in black, only parts of his face not covered by his wide-brimmed hat, or sunglasses visible as his lip burst in a cheery laugh. He waved. Tonight, I bring to you. He started in a deep voice as the crowd went silent. The only functioning prototypes of my latest gun. A tranquilizer coated with poison from deadly toads, and from my herb garden, highly flammable, although one wouldn't need fire for them to do their job. A slight graze could end a grizzly's life, to say nothing of our own. Up for auction next week. Murmurs streaked across the room as Gvadiskvi continued. To make it more of a challenge, each of the fighters are equipped with a gun, good for 2 shots. No other weapons. Look closely, for if you blink, you may miss it. But mind your eyes. At a signal, 6 figures stepped in the cleared area. A lithe figure prowled in, carefully eyeing her opponents. The woman had a vicious smile plastered on her face, tracing a finger up her leather-like body armor. My new guns will go well with the gear. The other woman grunted and flicked her the finger. A thin man slicked a tongue over his teeth, filed into sharp fangs. We'll see about that, doll. 2 other men staggered inside, either drunk or badly beaten up recently. Rasut was handed his gun as he weighed his options. Oil drums for cover, low-hanging light bulbs, a stale piece of gum in his mouth, and a gun with 2 rounds of poison within. He nodded, taking a deep breath. In mortality lies my victory. In victory, a worthy death. Till my last breath, the carnage will not stop. He looked up in front of him. The carnage must stop. Tonight, then, death is life. A bell rang without warning, and the crowd roared as slivers of crimson flew all around, spraying up a shower of blood where they struck. He moved in a flash, ducking past a couple of darts and backhanding a light bulb. Those nearest to him flinched, momentarily blinded. Those two died first. He shimmied up behind the loud-mouthed girl with the protective gear, swiftly shooting at the unbalanced man across the room. He was dead before he fell, the dart buried in his eye. Grabbing her by the hair, he smashed her nose on the oil drum, and she cried out, instinctively raising a hand to her face. He snaked a hand into the side of her neck and snapped, snatching the gun out of her hands even as her body fell. He ducked as a barrage of darts flew past him. Pressing his back against a drum, Rasut peeked to find the other drunk or injured man already dead, while the man with the razor-sharp teeth wrestled with the bulky woman. Their guns tossed a few feet away. So much for that momentary truce. He spied the light bulb near him, still swinging. He grabbed it with one hand, pulling out the chewing gum with the other, and sticking it on the bulb, recoiling when the hot glass burned his finger. At least this will go quicker than I anticipated, he thought as the glowing bulb twinkled like the stars outside. Damned twinkler. He moved quickly, moving behind another oil drum, as he fired twice at the one directly beneath the bulb, then tossed the dead girl's now empty gun at it for good measure. A thin spray or oil spurted from it, steadily growing into a tiny fountain, leaking oil that quickly spread across the floor. This caught the attention of the woman, who had finished crushing the throat of the thin man and pummeling him to death with her fists. She grinned, going for the two guns at her feet even as he leaped, and the world froze. In that moment, Rasut saw everything. The horror on Gvadiskvi's face, the victory on the woman's, the final moments of the mine as he shot at the light bulb which burst apart, flames engulfing the oil, and boom! The next day, all the papers talked about the mine blow up. A gas explosion, they called it. The official report said that no one was around when it happened. No one got hurt. The cleanup crew moved quickly, doing multiple sweeps and gathering what they found before loading the bodies in a truck to be taken away and incinerated. Yet no one noticed a single hand twitching still of the dead man who would still live, outliving his own carnage. No one noticed the mouth speak obscenities in broken whispers, cursing at himself, at the stars, and at life itself. Petrified. You would never have noticed it if you weren't looking for it. That was precisely the point. The instructions given in my embroidery group had been clear enough. After nightfall, take a stroll on the second lane past the bakery, look for the unlit lamppost, and turn down that dark alley, they said in hushed voices as the pianist began playing in sudden loud fervor. By coincidence, then you will see a mossy stone staircase, which you will descend, and at the end of it, there is a dim hallway She lives through the set of green doors on the left. The doors are tall and French like my husband's mistress, but peeling and weathered. I can tell they were once painted a lovely shade of emerald green. Half of that green paint lies in small piles of flakes on the cobblestone. I debate knocking and decide instead to reach with false confidence for the rusted copper handle. It turns downward easily. A small bell rings and echoes. Welcome. On the posters, she is grotesque, an example of how time and sin turn a person sour. But in person, she has the kind of enduring beauty you can't tear your eyes away from. Do come in, darling. Don't be shy. Contrary to popular belief, I don't bite. Although I can't say nothing here does. Her voice is like a wind chime, melodic and resonating, barely brushing over the crashing waves of her words. I wonder if I'm here too long, if that voice will drag me out to deep sea. Or did that only work on men in the myths? Take a seat, love. Yes, there is perfect. Would you like a cup of tea? Well, it's never too late for tea, is it now? I enjoy it late into the night myself, but maybe you've been raised more proper than that. Here, the cup is warm, not hot. If she noticed my shaking hands when reaching for it, she didn't say a word. It takes more than a few seconds for my eyes to adjust to the warmly lit room after a dark and shadowy street. Among her many talents, it cannot be said that she was a good decorator. The shabby boards of the walls are empty, but for an assortment of faded newspaper clippings from the highlights of her anonymous career. Obituaries, mostly. A tattered blue curtain with tassels hangs behind the armchair she's perched in, dividing off part of the room. Eccentrically painted shelves house arrays of books and bottles of objects my gaze prefers not to settle on. She would have been called a witch for her collections had she not already acquired numerous more colorful nicknames by the public. The only item of some value is worn loosely around her slender wrist, a heavy and ornate gold watch. The kind of thing that would make a petty thief's day to see glinting underneath a man's sleeve in the street. She catches me admiring it and smiles thinly, holding up her arm up to eye level. Isn't it a beauty? It was my first husband's, this watch. On the 10th anniversary of his death, I'm going to smash it to bits and melt the gold into a necklace for myself. I deserve a little gift from him, I think. Her laugh unnerves me, but I find myself too curious to be afraid. I politely say my condolences for her husband's death. Oh, darling, don't be sorry that that man is dead. The one good thing he did was to be the inspiration for the charity work I do. I haven't always done this. I used to be an actress, you know, a leading lady of the stage. Men would come from all over the city to see my shows, for I was beautiful then. Sometimes after the shows, they would approach me, usually blind drunk, complimenting my dress or what was underneath it, asking for a kiss or a drink or a night. And sometimes they didn't ask. My husband became my husband not because he asked, but because he damaged me. And he was rich enough to get away with it, and clever enough to know that marriage was my only option. She smooths down the skirt of her maroon dress, then looks up at me with a solemn expression I can't fully read. It isn't hard to believe she was once a sought-after woman. Though sunken in age, her cheeks are smooth, and her face looks as though it was hand-carved out of porcelain by God. Her hair is twisted into a dark crown atop her head, secured with metallic pins. Her eyes are like a cat's, but not a house cat. No, definitely not. Like those of a tiger that has been left to go hungry for far too long. I will her to continue talking and not look at me with those eyes again. We sip our tea in unison, upholding our masquerade as ladies. She takes in a breath. He said he loved me, and at the beginning, I believed it. He may have loved me. He certainly desired me. I think mostly he loved seeing the desire and jealousy of other men when he told them I was his wife. But that got old fast. So did I, in his eyes. When it had been a year, and I still had not given him a child, I turned ugly to him, and he acted ugly accordingly. One night, he came home from the pub talking about how the other men's wives had filled their houses with children by now. He spoke of babies like cattle. Then he threatened that he ought to tell the whole town that I was secretly a whore and leave me. I should have kept quiet and obeyed and smothered him in his sleep, like a good wife. Instead, I promised him that as long as I was alive, I would never let a child be born cursed enough to have him as a father. I'm sure you know what happens next, or otherwise you wouldn't be here, my darling. She traces a scar on her chin that I hadn't noticed before, extending along her jaw to the start of the delicate bones of her neck. I imagine it snaking around the rest of her throat in a ring, strangling her pale skin, and my breath catches. It looks as if lightning struck her. She was struck, though not by something as rare as lightning. I instinctively touch my collarbone, where I know without looking there is a ghastly bruise. My modest neckline covers it, but somehow it feels like she knows it's there. My mark of pain. I hope it goes away quickly, so my husband does not think me unsightly. But then again, perhaps that will not be necessary. I nod at her meekly to show that I do know what happens next. I can't say whether he truly meant to kill me, but to hurt me, to wound me, to make my thoughts and words disappear in flames. He meant that with all his heart. The funny thing is, it was him who made my words true. Of course, he couldn't have known that I was with child. Even I did not know then. After, no one would ever get to know. I made a gravestone, although there was nothing to bury. And then, a month later, I buried my poor, sick husband next to it, marked only with a slab that did not bear his name. Wealthy and beloved as his gold in his life, in death, he became only stone. The disease had taken him so quickly that there was no time for anyone to save him. Shame on chance to take him from this world so young. Got him like poison, essentially. The porcelain around her eyes cracks faintly in amusement. I have nothing to say in response. My mind stuck on the picture of a crude gravestone smaller than it should be. Now, love, how would you like your tragedy to occur? The widows in my town all chose differently. Most agree that the worst methods are only to be used for the worse husbands, but sometimes there is no rhyme or reason to it. After all, all's fair in love and war. Millions of second and third and fourth thoughts crossed my mind on the way here. But now those voices are silent, and there is only mine and hers, and the input of the hissing wind outside. Well, what will it be? In 2 weeks, it will happen. On the way home after a day of work, my husband will feel a bout of hopelessness that gives him a nudge to hurl himself off of the local bridge. The river below is not a kind one, especially to those who never learned to swim. He will have been drunk, since he often is, and everyone knows how he gets when he's drunk. No one will discuss a death as taboo as taking your own life. My children and I will cry and wear black for weeks, though no longer than what is expected. At the same time, the black of our bruises will fade. He won't be missed very much, really. Perhaps that French woman will miss him, but she would have met the man that I knew soon enough. I will decide to raise my children in the countryside alone, and we will be happy. I cannot say yet whether I will regret it. The final time I will see the woman's wild tiger's eyes, She will tell me that not once has she regretted anything in her life. She will say that it was a pleasure to do it, and fearfully I will believe her. "Oh, it really is getting late, love. Your family must be at home expecting you." I reply that they are, and I thank her for her kindness, nervously reaching to shake her hand. How much blood has coated it? On the posters, they say she has killed 3 men, but I know these were simply the times she wanted it enough to make it gruesome. The posters also envision her as grotesque, which means that they have not ever seen her, or the mark on her jaw from her fall after being struck by lightning. The posters know nothing. The men know nothing. We women must stick together, yes? The image of my young daughter appears and consumes my mind. I would do everything in my power to ensure she never has to know the instructions to get here. There will be no scars for my girl to trace. I will make sure of that. I nod and drop the woman's unassuming porcelain hand. Beneath the sound of her wind chime voice is a softer noise I hadn't paid attention to before. Almost witness, she saw him. She saw him get killed. She saw the life drain out of his eyes. She heard his screams of pain. She heard the footsteps of the murderer as they ran away. She felt a tingly sensation course through her. She felt a tight knot form in her chest. She witnessed it all, but no one believed her. Not a soul, but she knew it had happened. Her eyes couldn't have betrayed her. She wasn't dreaming, nor was she hallucinating. The rasping of the man's final breaths and the crimson blood were all too vivid for it to be a figment of her imagination. She was there. She was watching. She was witnessing. She had approached the body, hands trembling. The man lay in a pool of his own blood beneath her feet, his body peppered with bullet wounds. His glassy eyes were rolled back, showing only the bloodshot sclera of his eyes. Her fingers were numb as she had dialed the number of the police. Her breath was shaky, and her voice was uncertain. She told the officer on the phone what had happened. "May I ask what your name is?" The officer had questioned. She responded softly. A moment went by. Her eyes widened as the officer started to laugh. "Nice try. Don't joke that much. We all know murders are implausible." The officer had drawled before ending the call. The phone fell out of her hand and landed with a thud on the ground. What was the officer talking about? She clutched her heart with both of her hands and fell to her knees. What is going on? Her head was spinning. The ground around her started to spin as well. The lifeless body was still in front of her, her clothes and hands now soaked with blood. No. Something was wrong. Something was missing. Why did the officer hang up so abruptly? Why was the officer so ignorant? She stood up and started to walk away from the body. She needed help. She needed to ask someone else. As she turned around, she saw a young man walking by. Her feet dragged her towards him. "Please help! Please help me!" Her cries were loud and she collapsed onto her knees. The man immediately turned his head. "What's wrong?" he asked, his eyebrows cocked in annoyance. "Please, there has been a murder. Someone has been killed. I saw it all," she begged, her voice desperate and cracking. The man's eyes lingered over her for a moment. He scoffed. "This isn't funny. Joking about death is despicable." He shook his head as he walked away. "Please," she called out weakly, grasping for the man's hand, but it was out of reach, and her hand fell to her side. Tears streamed down her face. They tasted like salt and regret. "Stop. Stop it. Stop crying." She kept scolding herself as she slowly stood up. "Stop being weak. Make them believe you. They must believe you." She hurried back to the scene of the crime. The knot in her chest tightened even harder each time she saw those lifeless eyes. It was as if they were chiding her, tormenting her. She grabbed her phone from the ground, making sure it was still functional. She wanted to call the police. She should call the police. But what if she got in trouble? What if they didn't believe her again? She shut her eyes as pain filled her body. Her words had failed her once again. Her mouth refused to open, refused to fight back. How weak she was. She crumbled to the floor in tears. After all, that was what she was best at. Crying. All she could do was cry. She couldn't even stand up for herself. Couldn't even prove something. And she hated herself for being so useless. Her mind was swirling with thoughts. She couldn't swallow, nor could she speak. Her throat was dry and hoarse. She still knew she wasn't dreaming. This is real. She is real. It had to be real. But why didn't anyone believe her? Why was she never given a chance? Her breathing started to slow down. Her tears lessened. What if it is a dream? But in my dreams, who am I? Where am I? Her reality felt distorted and warped. Nothing seemed real. Yet nothing seemed fake. She reached up, trying to grasp something, trying to find something tangible to provide her some certainty. Maybe she was nothing. Nothing at all. Maybe she was as thin as air. No, thinner than air. As unreachable as the heavens. As unbelievable as the gaping chasm of hell. No, no, she had to stop. No, she knew this was real. She couldn't push the truth away. She still had to face the truth. Truth is something no one can evade. What was wrong with these people? Were they just merely stupid? Or oblivious? Or did they just not care? Why did they not believe her? What had she done to make them so against the thought of murder? She had so many questions, but no answers. But there was only one way to elucidate these questions. Slowly, she dialed the police again, with trembling, frail, bloodied fingers. They picked up. "Hello? I'd like to report a murder." She begins once more, telling her story. "All right. What's your name, miss?" the officer asks. But before she can respond, the man cuts her off with a chuckle. "Just kidding. We don't need your name for a prank." She opened her mouth to protest, but the call ended. Slowly, she pushed herself up, wobbling a bit. She took a moment to stabilize herself, then inhaled sharply. Her eyes were closed, and her face was pointed towards the blue sky. Her eyes slowly opened after a brief pause, glimmering under warm rays of sunlight. "My name," she began quietly, swaying gently with the wind, "is Elora Bathory." She giggled, then disappeared into the shadows of an alleyway, twirling a gun in her hands, dressed for ruin. On a sticky Saturday evening in downtown Philadelphia, the line for Evie's Eden wrapped around the block. Blaring, fast-tempo music and strobing neon invaded the detectives' senses as they pushed their way through a throng of warm, gyrating bodies to take a seat at the bar. The stench of sweat and stale beer permeated the dark room, and the rush of frigid air from the vents above offered minimal relief from the stifling heat. The officers shouted to make themselves heard over the din, while several people almost knocked the men from their seats in their drunken attempt to squeeze between them and get the bartender's attention. The younger of the two men, a clean-shaven blonde with neatly combed hair and stern hazel eyes, tugged at his tie and scowled at a group of scantily clad women with neon-painted bodies as they approached him. They gave him sour looks and a few rude gestures in return before scampering off to find a more willing recipient of their affections. His partner looked down on most of the room at almost 6 feet. Gray streaked through his dark, purposely disheveled hair, and there was a hard glint in his cobalt eyes. His broad shoulders and well-built barrel chest, along with the faint scars littering his arms, made Vincent look less approachable than the blonde detective. The illusion was broken by the deep laugh lines etched into his cheeks as he chuckled and teased his dour partner. "You didn't have to scowl at them like that. The poor girls were just being friendly." The blonde scoffed, rolling his eyes as he said, "I'm not interested in their kind of friendship. Besides, we're here to work, not socialize, remember? Speaking of, should we really be consorting with criminals to solve cases?" Vincent ordered a Corona and lime from a bartender even taller than him, with bubblegum pink and deep purple hair styled in a short mohawk. He accepted the drink with a charming grin and left a generous tip before facing his partner, ignoring his disapproving glare. Criminals make the best informants. This one has helped us with a lot of cases. Her information network is invaluable. The younger detective grit his teeth, holding back an argument. No matter his feelings, the boy had to accept that their case had gone from nearly solved to stone cold in less than 24 hours. They needed whatever help they could get. Vincent's partner tugged at his tie. Sweat rolled down the boy's neck and stained his collar. He had tried to convince him to change out of his uniform, but was unsurprised when he refused. He wondered if the stubborn boy regretted it now with the sweltering heat pressing in on them. Vincent downed his drink and ordered another while his partner gave in, removing his tie and unbuttoning the top 2 buttons. The young detective barked another question before Vincent could comment. "Where is this informant then?" Every minute we waste here is another our suspect has to flee the country. Oh, I don't think we have to worry about that. She should be here any... Ah, there she is. They turned their attention to the top of a metal staircase at the back of the club. Vincent's throat felt dry despite the 2 drinks he'd already finished as he watched his old friend step through the VIP entrance. She gave her white suede jacket to the doorman with an alluring smile, then turned to face the officers as she descended the stairs. Diamond-studded gold stilettos clicked against the metal as she went. Her strapless, midnight pantsuit with a plunging neckline swayed around her ankles and long legs, but cinched tightly at her waist to accentuate wide hips and hug her chest. The fabric shimmered under the strobing neon lights, and the diamond choker that cascaded down her throat like a waterfall and nestled between her breasts flashed brightly. Smooth olive-toned skin contrasted the gleaming jewels perfectly. Bright copper ringlets spilled partially over one shoulder. The rest pulled back with a clip to show off the shaved right side of her head. Russet painted lips with a prominent cupid's bow, dark thick lashes, and a chocolate smoky eye highlighted her high cheekbones and bright electric blue eyes. Vincent turned to face his partner as he scoffed and said, "You're joking." "Nope." "Detective, I'd like you to meet Evelyn Ross." "Evelyn, this is my new partner, Connor Williams." Connor was so distracted by her appearance that he hadn't realized she was walking right toward them. Evelyn smiled coyly and extended an intricately manicured hand. Tiny rhinestones were arranged in a rose design on every other stiletto-shaped nail, which were painted to match her eyes. Her breathy tone was deeper than Vincent remembered, and laced with expertly veiled sarcasm. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Detective." Reluctantly taking her proffered hand, Connor forced an awkward smile and said, "Likewise." Her lips twitched with amusement as she dropped his hand, then turned to speak to Vincent with something akin to fondness. "Join me for a drink?" "Of course." Evelyn lifted a panel and moved behind the bar towards a burgundy-painted steel door. Vincent 2 steps behind her. Connor followed, but the senior detective shook his head and said, "Wait here. Get a drink or something. I won't be long." Then, before Connor had a chance to question him, Vincent followed the gang leader through the door. As the steel door to Evelyn's office closed behind him with a click, a chill washed over Vincent's face and arms, leaving goosebumps in its wake. A faint aroma of vanilla and dark cherries replaced the reek of sweat. Vincent's stiff shoulders relaxed at the familiar scent. 4 sleek leather armchairs surrounded a mahogany card table, and a personal bar stood in the far left corner. An ashtray made of cobalt glass sat on the table, clean and empty of any remnants. Vincent's fingers itched for the smokes tucked in his breast pocket. A single painting of a man and 2 women performing around a piano hung on the wall opposite him. It had hung there since the day it went missing from a museum in Boston some 30 years ago, when he was barely a thought. Evelyn's office was quiet, except for the clinking of glass as she poured them drinks. The reinforced concrete walls, painted evergreen, blocked out all trace of music or chatter from the club. Vincent sunk into the cool, smooth leather, stifling a sigh. Evelyn sauntered over to the table, sitting on top directly in front of him and crossing her legs before handing him his glass. Vincent enjoyed the bitterness of the bourbon as it washed over his tongue and slid down his throat. She always did have the best taste in liquor. Vincent watched his old friend curiously as she set the glass aside and leaned close to pull 2 camel blue 100s and a lighter from his front pocket. Her lips just shy of grazing his stubbled cheek, and the heady aroma of vanilla and dark cherries briefly overwhelmed him. Electric blue eyes dancing with mirth bore into his as she slipped the cig between his teeth and lit it for him. Then, a rush of clarity and disappointment hit hard as she sat back to light her own. Curls of white smoke drifted from her lips and slowly filled the room. She stared him down with a raised brow until the cigarette had burnt down almost to the filter. Then she said, "So, you going to tell me what you want?" He raised his own brows and grinned teasingly as he answered, "Can't I just come to see an old friend?" Her unimpressed stare pulled a snort of laughter from his lips. She held her hand out expectantly and retorted, "Not when you have your dog waiting outside." Vincent relented with a sigh and pulled a file from inside his jacket, which she snapped from his fingers and threw open on the table next to her. The detective lowered his leg from the table and leaned forward to look over its contents, which she was flipping through with a carefully placid expression. The faces of 15 young women stared up at him, all of whom had gone missing within the last 6 months. The final photograph in the file was a mugshot of a man with beady gray eyes, greasy black hair, a pudgy face, and a sad, wispy little mustache. Vincent watched Evelyn's face carefully as her bright eyes paused on his picture, looking for any sign of recognition. If she did know the man, she wasn't giving it away, so he decided to probe her a little. "He's our main suspect. Goes by the name Rob, full name Robert Carroll. We've been tracking him down for a month, even got a hit on his hideout. Then we go in for the raid last night, and he's gone without a trace, so now we've hit a dead end. Do you recognize him?" Evelyn placed the picture back in the file, closed it, and took a generous sip from her drink before answering with a carefully even tone. "Afraid not, should I?" Vincent kept his own tone light as he pushed a little more. "Well, our files say he was one of your men until about a year ago. You've made it a point to know the names of everyone who works for you, haven't you?" The stare she pinned him with was bitterly cold, and her breathy voice took on a dangerous edge. "My organization doesn't deal in sex trafficking, a fact of which I know you're quite aware." "Yes. I'm also very aware of how you've punished those who have gone behind your back in the past, which is why I thought you might be able to help me find my suddenly missing suspect." The way her lips curled into a cruel sneer and her face turned away confirmed his suspicions that she was involved in Robert's disappearance. He sighed as he put out his cigarette, stood, and placed his arms on either side of Evelyn's hips, caging her in. She met his gaze with pursed lips as he asked, "Where is he, Evie?" The brazen woman leaned forward, trailing her sharp nails down the side of his jaw and over his chest. The coy smirk was back as she goaded him. "If I did know where he is, why should I hand him over to you? My men are mine to punish. That's the deal we made, remember? This isn't some petty drug dealer who stole from you. This man is responsible for the disappearance of 15 women that we know of. Who knows how many are still alive? Their families deserve justice." Evie rolls her eyes and scoffs at his appeal to her better nature. "Oh yes, sitting comfortably in a jail cell watching TV and getting 3 meals a day sounds like justice to me. Those families deserve to see him strung up and castrated. Try again." Vincent muttered a curse under his breath. If it were anyone else, he would just get a warrant, but Evelyn had become untouchable in the last few years. She had half the department, the mayor, even their state senator in her pocket. No one would dare sign a warrant against her, and she'd never take a threat from him seriously anyway. Time to change tactics. He wove his left hand into her ginger curls, running calloused fingers down the back of her neck. She tensed at the contact and repressed a shiver. but the goosebumps erupting over her arms and the excitement in her eyes gave her away. Encouraged, Vincent pressed his forehead against hers and whispered, "For me, then, as a favor to an old friend?" Her nails grazed his cheek again as she glowered. "Right. A friend who only comes to see me when he wants something. I feel a little used. Maybe you could give me something in exchange for my kindness." "What do you want?" He could guess the answer, had known her long enough to read the cues. In their previous meetings, she had always treated him like he was just another business partner, careful to keep her distance, giving no hint toward their long-standing and complicated friendship. Her forwardness now was telling, but he wanted her to say it. A selfish part of him needed her to admit that she had missed their closeness. Evie pushed him back into the chair, placing her knees on either side of his and pulling herself close. Her hand left his cheek, burying itself into his messy dark locks, gripping tight. Evelyn's electric blue eyes bore into his as she said, "Don't play dumb, Vince. It doesn't suit you, and I'm not in the mood for any more games." It was as much of an admission as he was going to get, and Vincent gave in with a groan as he pulled her lips to his in a bruising kiss, one that she returned with just as much vigor. Sometime later, Vincent watched with hazy satisfaction as the cobalt lace of Evie's lingerie disappeared back underneath her shimmering silk outfit. When Evie faced him with an equally sated look, he took a moment to appreciate her swollen, though still perfectly painted lips. Her hair, which he had torn from its clip, cascaded over her shoulders in a wild tangle of curls that made her look deceptively innocent. One could almost mistake her for a normal woman like this, instead of a dangerous crime boss. He wondered how many others had been permitted to see her that way, then scolded himself for hoping he was the only one. Vincent gave up that chance a long time ago, the day he swore his oath and joined the police force. Even this small indulgence was one he shouldn't have allowed himself. Once they finished straightening themselves, the pair looked at each other. Vincent lamented the return of Evelyn's closed-off expression that had been so open and vulnerable under his touch just a few minutes ago. But their time was up, and he came here for a reason. He struggled to keep the regret out of his tone as he asked, "So, where can I find Mr. Carroll?" Evelyn grinned playfully, hips swaying as she walked over to the bar, picked up a cell phone, and hit one of the speed dial numbers. After a few moments, the call picked up. Her orders were curt. "Bring him in." A side door that Vincent swore was a wall before opened, and a beat-up, barely conscious man who matched Rob's description to a T was shoved through by two bulky, suited thugs. Rob, with hands tied in front of him, collapsed to his knees. The thugs backed out without a word, and the door shut behind them, leaving nothing but smooth wall in its place. Evelyn laughed at his incredulous glare and said, "He's all yours, detective." Vincent rolled his eyes and strode over to the quickly fading man, tossing a sarcastic remark over his shoulder as he yanked the suspect up. "If you were going to hand him over anyway, why bother making such a fuss?" She giggled and walked over to open the burgundy door for him. He could already see his younger partner's expression morphing from annoyance to surprise and disbelief. Evie's breath at his ear sent a tingle down his spine. "Well, I thought he would make a good gift, but I wanted something too. Don't pretend you didn't enjoy it." He glanced to the right to meet her roguish grin as she continued, "Happy birthday." Connor took the unconscious trafficker off his hands, so Vincent turned back to Evie, who stood in the doorway with arms crossed, looking way too pleased with herself. He had forgotten that his birthday was tomorrow, and that it was something he and Evie shared. Vincent chuckled wryly and carded a scarred hand through his hair as he thanked her. Then he helped Connor drag their suspect out to the car, tossed him in the back, and settled into the driver's seat. From the corner of his eye, he saw his partner open his mouth, most likely to barrage him with questions. "Don't ask, it's complicated. But now you see what I was saying about Evelyn being one of our best informants. This isn't the first time she's handed our guy right to us, and it probably won't be the last." Connor didn't press for more information. He faced front with a thoughtful, almost conflicted look, and the ride to the station passed in silence. A silence that Vincent spent thinking of her, of their bodies pressed together, and foolishly wishing that he could do it again. Hamster Owl. Trigger warning. Crime scene, murder, suggestion of sexual violence. Douglas hadn't felt his stomach stir on the job for years, not since he was green out of the academy. Something about the blood spatter against the kids' toys, though. It had sent his head spinning, dizziness threatening to undermine his hard-won reputation. The bright, dancing geometric shapes that adorned the red-stained sheets and curtains were not helping matters. Thankfully, the girl's body had already been removed. He averted his gaze to the ceiling and traced the lines of the Artex pattern while taking deep breaths and composing himself. Putting his heavy case down in the doorway, he steeled his will and finally stepped inside. Douglas methodically placed his feet on the clean areas of carpet, stepping over the red smears that had been spread all over the room. Slowly, he made his way over to the grim-faced detective, who was already surveying the scene. "If you're gonna lose your lunch, Doug, please do it outside," Bishop remarked, not looking up from where he crouched, picking through the youngster's possessions with the blunt end of a pen. "I'm okay. It just got me for a second. Not seen one this bad since '87 and the Dilby murders down in Reading. I'll be all right." It's a damn shame, that's for sure. Sweet girl, going by all the stuffed animals and posters. My kid's got a thing for boy bands too, he said, gesturing around at the walls that looked like they'd been at the business end of a meat grinder. "You've certainly got your work cut out for you, ready for a long night." "Absolutely, sir. It'll be worth every coffee to nail whatever sick son of a bitch could do something like this," Douglas said, his muscles turning from jelly to iron at the resolve his own words invoked. "Good. Well, I'm done here for now. Do your thing and get me the results as fast as you can. The father is in the back of a car already, but he's denying it all, doing a grand job of playing the distraught, loving parent. So, I'll need whatever you can get me to pin him," Bishop said as he pulled off a pair of sweaty latex gloves and threw them into a hazmat bag in the hallway. "Ever consider it might not have been him and you're torturing a grieving parent?" Douglas asked to his retreating back. "Come on, Doug. How long you been doing this? It's always the dad," the detective said, turning when he reached the top of the stairs. "I'd start with the machete stuck in the bed head if I were you. But hey, I'm not the scientist." Douglas took up his large case, unclasped it, and opened it wide on the floor of the hallway, outside the girl's bedroom door. He pressed his shoulders against one wall to let a beat officer past, and swore under his breath at the close confines. It was almost easier in the woods, although the results were undoubtedly better from inside a sealed home. He snapped on his own gloves, grabbed a Sharpie and a handful of plastic bags and went to work. With a roll of his eyes, he grabbed the machete first. Of course, that was marked vital. Then he gathered all the jewelry she'd been wearing and had been left behind by the morticians. Most of it was plastic, brightly colored and in the shape of butterflies or flowers. He pulled hairs and fibers from the bed and carpet, then combed the room from top to bottom for any dropped items. Nothing turned up, Sheets, clothes, carpet, and curtain swatches all went into larger bags. Even those fundamentals took hours, mostly because he was more fastidious than most. He had lost count of the cases that had been won thanks to his diligence. Having worked with Bishop for almost a decade, he knew all too well that whichever way it went, a grieving father's future rested on his work alone. The detective had already found his man. Sipping a hot coffee from a cardboard cup, he scanned the room from its center. Taking a break had the tendency to reveal more than the close-up work. Sometimes you had to take a step back and think. He marked a Blockbuster video on the desk. He would fill out the forms to get it returned, but he doubted the shop would ever see it again. Once they saw the news, they would probably refuse it anyway. What looked like her diary was tucked under the edge of the mattress. He made a mental note to grab that, and in the same vein, thought to check for any hidey holes in vents or behind furniture. Girls of an age stashed plenty of secrets. His eyes fell on the mountain of stuffed toys, wedged against the dresser and covered in a mist of dried blood droplets. He had avoided it until then, worried it might set off his queasy reaction a second time. While forcing his gaze to wander across it, two beady yellow eyes caught his attention. With a smirk, he put down his coffee, quickly reapplied the gloves, and strode over to greet them. "Well, look at you," he said, pulling out what could only be described as a hamster owl. The freakish chimera stared back at him, almost with its own intent. "Furby, right?" "Oh, woo-woo, whoa!" The demented toy yelled as it came to life in his hands, batting its eyelids and twitching its ears. He almost threw it across the room in surprise, but managed to control the impulse and holding it at a full arm's length, set it down on the girl's desk. "Damn thing!" he yelled to a series of chuckles from the officers stationed outside. He went back to the list of tasks he had assigned himself, but throughout his bagging and tagging, he was constantly assaulted by an unintelligible babbling. The cursed doll would go quiet, and then out of nowhere, at high volume, holler at Douglas. After the third time of jumping out of his skin, he stalked back to the desk in a fury. "I remember the ads for you," he said through gritted teeth, fully aware he was now talking to it. "Remember," it interrupted. "Yes, remember. Very clever. I remember that you were supposed to be smart. Hell, I'm pretty sure there was a ban on you being brought into the station, in case you could listen in on things you shouldn't. Something about spy software or AI even." "Remember!" the Furby squawked again. You don't seem so smart to me. Just a damn novelty. Do me a favor and shut up!" Douglas roared. He turned his back on it, not wanting to waste any more time trying to figure out how to turn it off. He was almost done and was feeling the impatience of the late hour and the clouded thinking it brought. Yet, before he could take a second step, he spun around at the words the toy belted at his back. "You're mine, bitch." He stood frozen, head cocked to one side and looking into its demon-like eyes. Surely not. "What did you say? Did you remember?" He ventured, not sure if he was pushing the limits of what was reasonable. "Remember, you're mine, bitch. You can't prance around naked in your window like that and expect me not to want you. I might be your neighbor, but I'm still a man." Douglas shook his head with raised eyebrows, let out a sigh of disbelief, and bagged the toy. He marked it as vital. Hopefully it would be enough. The Plunderers' bank robbery and waltzing have a lot in common. Both have defined rhythms, and they're better with a partner. After waiting my turn, like an everyday customer, I handed my note and a paper sack to the blonde girl behind the counter while pulling back my sport coat, to show her the butt of my pistol. The note read, "This is a robbery. Remain calm, so no one gets hurt. Fill the sack from your drawer. Have a nice day." When she scanned my note, her eyes bulged and flicked from side to side. Her frightened blue peepers filled with disbelief as she stared at me to see if this was a prank. I smiled like a friend. "Please fill it up." With trembling fingers, she stuffed bills into the sack as if she'd win a prize for the fullest bag. The gorilla behind me noticed something wrong. Maybe the sweat-gouging channels through the quivering blonde's rouge tipped him off. He grunted and grabbed me in a bear hug, pinning my arms. My marine training kicked in and I stomped the arch of his foot with the sharp leather heel of my polished Oxfords. He winced and loosened his grip. This gave me enough slack to reach behind and twist his balls. He yipped like an injured puppy and let go, slowly sinking to the floor. The bank patrons turned to stare at the commotion. Unsure what was happening, I reached through the teller's wicket and yanked the half-filled sack of money from the blonde's jittery hands. As my assailant rolled on the floor, grabbing his crotch, one of the suits in the back reached for a phone. "Time to go." I strolled out of the bank before anyone attempted to jump me. Outside the bank, I wanted to run, but nothing attracts attention more than a man running from a bank with a bag in his hand. The alarm clanged, and I turned towards the bank like the other pedestrians, plastering a puzzled look on my face. A siren wailed in the distance. Sweat beaded my forehead, and I lengthened my strides short of a power walk. When I reached the corner, white exhaust flowed from the red Edsel coupe, and its big V8 growled, ready to whisk me to safety. I jumped in the passenger seat, and Marge drove away at 30 miles per hour. 2 police cruisers screamed past us in the other lane. Now, we'd have to ditch this flashy car in case anyone noticed it fleeing the scene. Marge and I have been robbing banks since I got out of the Marines in '53. My posting to Korea separated us for 3 agonizing years. And when I got back to the States, we promised each other we'd never be apart again. Although we talked about it, we never got married. We both felt that a piece of government parchment would not make us love each other any more than we did. When our cash ran low, we'd find a suitable bank in a small town, make an unauthorized withdrawal, and live comfortably on the proceeds for a few months. As long as we didn't take too much or go to the well too often, the local cops forgot us, and the FBI had enough problems with organized crime to worry about a small-town bank robbery. We never hit the same town twice. Our life between jobs was quiet and measured, spending the winter in Florida, soaking up the sun like other tourists. We danced every Saturday night and fished the local lakes. Marge loved the fall colors, so we spent September in New England before turning south for the winter. I don't remember the name of the town in Minnesota, when we ran low on cash. While Marge gassed up the car, I got us a table in the Moosehead Diner. Over the blue plate special of corned beef and hash, I decided I wanted to go fishing. Margie, I've been thinking. It would be a shame to be in northern Minnesota and not go walleye fishing. How about we rent a cabin after this job and go fishing for the weekend? Marge placed her napkin on the table and pursed her lips. Okay, Harry, but all the cabins are probably rented. I reached for her hand. This is the end of the season, and we'll find a cabin somewhere, just for the weekend. Then we'll head for Vermont. She squeezed my hand and ran her thumb over my knuckles. We'll need some bait. I hadn't thought that far ahead. We'll stop at a bait shop and pick up some minnows. Or, if you'd rather, you can watch me fish. She removed her cat's eyeglasses with the fake rhinestones and leaned over the table. Not on your life, Buster. You fish. I fish. And I'll catch bigger fish. Just you watch me. I finished my coffee, left a $10 bill on the table, and wiped the crumbs off my tie. I'm going to the little boy's room, and then to work. As I walked across the street to the Imperial Bank, Marge parked the car around the corner. We took the North Road out of town towards Canada and doubled back south on a series of gravel concession roads. Navigation was Marge's job. When we hit the interstate, we turned east towards New England. The cops must have figured it out, or got lucky. They'd had 10 years to learn out our pattern. When we turned onto the interstate, 2 police cruisers, nose to nose, blocked our path to freedom. Blue and red lights flashed, and cops leaned across the hoods, pointing shotguns at us. 2 more cruisers pulled out of a side road and blocked our retreat. Marge slowed as we approached the roadblock and parked on the shoulder. A cop with a bullhorn yelled, "Get out of the car and lay on the ground." Marge turned off the ignition and gripped the wheel with hands at 10 and 2 while staring out the windshield. "Goodbye, Harry." I wiped a tear from my eye. "Goodbye, Marge." I drew my pistol and shot her through the ear. Blood spattered the windshield and side window as she slumped on the driver's door. I put the pistol in my mouth and pulled the trigger. The Rolodex Robbery. Last week, tragedy struck, and my home was broken into. I came home exhausted from work one day to see the glass in my door shattered, cupboards ajar, papers strewn about the floor. Naturally, I sprinted back outside and immediately called the police as my heart was attempting to shatter my ribs. Thankfully, the police showed up fairly quickly and cleared the house. Whoever broke in was long gone. Won the one hand. I was relieved, because if I had walked fully in and they were still there, who knows what could have happened? On the other hand, I had no idea who did this, and now it would require an investigation. Once the crime scene investigators cleared the house for me to enter, I took a quick inventory of what was missing. TV? Still there. Jewelry? Here. Computer. It's been accessed, but nothing was added or deleted. Any major items of worth were still there, but I still had one more place to look. I went into my kitchen and checked the false bottom in the cupboard underneath my sink. My heart splattered into the floor when I saw that the safe that I normally kept there was missing. There was a giant, gaping hole in the dust where my super secure safe used to be. "Officers, officers," I cried. "I know what's missing. I know what they were after." One of them flipped to a new page in her notebook. "Okay? What is it?" "My family's secret recipes. They were all in a Rolodex that I kept in a triple-locked safe that was hidden underneath a cupboard." The two police officers shared a look. "Recipes? That's what all this is about?" I took a breath. "Yes, I know how it sounds. You need to understand that my family has been the top champion in every local, regional, and state bake-off for the last 10 years. I come from a very long line of exceptional bakers, and I'm willing to bet that if it came down to it, someone would kill for these recipes." Neither officer looked particularly convinced, but they wrote down my statement anyway. "All right, Ms. Norman. We'll analyze our evidence and start on the investigation. We'll get back to you if we get some answers." The police finally cleared out of my house, and I was left with the wreckage of the break-in. For the next 4 hours, I swept, wiped, mopped, and tried to get rid of any sign that someone had broken into my house. In doing all that, I had time to think. Chances are, it'll be a while before I get any answers. If I get any answers, I might just have to take matters into my own hands. Pouring myself a cup of tea, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at my sink. Who would know where I keep those recipes? That's not a particularly obvious spot, and I haven't told many people about it. I haven't told many people about it. At that moment, I came up with a particularly genius plan, if I do say so myself. There are a select few people that are aware of not only my family's recipes, but also that hiding spot. That narrowed my suspect list down to 3 people: Julia, Angel, and Cameron. They're all my friends to an extent, but we met through a baking competition last year and bonded over our competitiveness. Normally, they're good people, but when it comes to baking, the gloves are off. I wouldn't put it past one of them to steal my recipes to give their holiday desserts an edge. Sitting at that table, I kept tapping my fingers in thought. The annoyance at both myself and the intruder settled deep in my stomach. I didn't mean for any of them to see that spot in the first place. I was cleaning up before they came over and had my headphones in, so I didn't hear them knock or come in. Honestly, them just coming in when I didn't answer the door should have been a red flag right there. I had just put the Rolodex away after returning a recipe to it when I turned around to find the three of them standing in my kitchen. After that, I should have just moved it. But at the time, I didn't think any of them would go as far as to break into my own home. I'm just glad my daughter wasn't home for any of this. Kate thankfully left yesterday to go a college friend's cabin for the week. I don't know what I would have done if she was here when the intruder broke in. Like I told the officer, people would kill for those recipes. Anyway, back to my plan. I figured that if I could get everyone together for a cookie swap, whoever stole my recipes would be almost certainly arrogant enough to try to outdo everyone else using one of them. Betcha they think that I haven't memorized every single secret ingredient that could distinguish those recipes. They would be wrong. The next day, I called all three of them, and we arranged for a cookie swap that Friday. I had 2 days to think about whoever is the most likely to steal my Rolodex and what kind of cookie I should make to destroy all of them. By the time the Friday of the swap rolled around, I had settled on an ooey-gooey, dark chocolate and peppermint cookie that had always been a hit of mine. What I hadn't settled on, however, was who the intruder could be. I had just pulled the last batch of cookies out of the oven when I heard the doorbell ring. I smoothed out my dress and put on my biggest smile before opening the door with the newly repaired window. "Hey!" I cheered. "Happy holidays!" Despite the freezing weather, they all smiled and greeted me in turn. I let them into the house and offered to take their cookies back to the kitchen. While they were preoccupied with discarding their bundles of layers, I snuck a peek at each of their cookies. Sprinkle-covered shortbread? Nope. We're not really a shortbread family. We prefer richer flavors. Sugar cookies? Like every family, we do have a classic sugar cookie recipe, but I can't be sure if this is it until I try it. Red velvet cookie with vanilla buttercream frosting? Now that sounds familiar. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to try this one too to confirm. I grabbed the wine glasses and tucked the bottle under my arm to join my guests in the living room. For the first few minutes, we just chatted about small nothings. The weather, the traffic, how good the wine was, blah, blah, blah. So, Grace, what's new? Anything exciting happen recently? Angel asked. Do I tell them to see how they react? Or do I test their reactions by not saying anything? Nothing much. Work is busy as ever, and I'm just preparing for the holidays with Kate. Christmas shopping, decorating, the Christmas card. You know, the works, I tried to say, as casually as possible. Julia nodded along sympathetically. I feel ya. Between trying to get presents and wrap presents and fighting with the in-laws, who are staying with us right now, by the way, without asking first, I'm absolutely swamped. She sounds a little too busy to be breaking into my house. Congrats, Julia. You're at the bottom of the list. And you, Cameron? What's going on in your life? He took a sip of wine. A much calmer holiday season. than you guys, apparently. Jason and I are having a pretty quiet Christmas this year. And unlike you all, I'm not 60 and don't send out Christmas cards. We knew he meant well, but we jokingly acted insulted regardless. Well, you should. What else is your mother going to cry over when you don't return for Christmas? Angel said. Probably the margarita that she'll be sipping on the cruise that she and Dad booked for the holidays, he retorted. I chuckled at that. It didn't, however, change the fact that he had plenty of time to break into my home. Angel, you're up, I said. Work, study, sleep, repeat. She groaned. Nursing school is kicking my butt. Why did I think this was a good idea? Because you want to further your career? And one day, get the big bucks, Julia supplied. Angel groaned again and threw her head back. But at what cost? The longer we all chatted, the more disappointed I knew I was going to be when I found out who broke in. I keep forgetting how much I like these guys. I decided to rip the bandage off. All right. Now for the main event. The cookies, I announced. I grabbed the cookies and returned them to their respective owners. I'd like to go first, Julia provided, holding open her container of shortbreads. We all reached in and grabbed one. I put it up to my lips and took a bite. Crumbly, but not too dry. Sweet, but not overbearing. Still lacks a bit of flavor. Overall, for a shortbread, that's not too bad. Next up was Angel. We each took a frosted sugar cookie, elegant design with the decorating, not too dense, still flavorful, and no secret ingredient. Guess she's off the hook. Finally, it was Cameron's turn. I carefully took a nibble of the red velvet cookie, and right away, I could tell something was off. Well, this doesn't taste right, and the secret ingredient certainly isn't in here. Jason's on a bit of a vegan kick right now. Personally, not a fan, but I still thought I'd give vegan red velvet cookies a shot, he explained. I swallowed the cookie down. The things we do for love. As everyone took one of my cookies, I took a moment to think. No one had any of the secret ingredient or used one of my family's recipes. So, either they're not as cocky as I thought, or they didn't do it. As everyone finished their assessments of my treat, I prepared my next move. Actually, when I said not much was happening, that was a lie. A few days ago, my house got broken into. My family's Rolodex of recipes was stolen. I glanced over their faces. Dang it. Nothing but pity or shock. I'm so sorry. That sucks. That's awful. Are you okay? Thank you, but I'm fine. Wait. Why are you telling us this now? Cameron asked, suspicious. Well? All of a sudden, my phone started ringing. One moment, I stepped away into the kitchen. Kate, sweetie, what's up? Everything all right? I asked. Yeah, Mom. I just had a quick question. How much flour goes into the sugar cookie recipe? That was not what I was expecting her to ask. What? How much flour is in the sugar cookie recipe? I can't read Grandma's handwriting for this part. I took a breath. Honey, Do you have all the recipes? Yeah. Sorry. I left the kitchen all a mess. I couldn't remember where it was, and Aubrey was rushing me. And I promised everyone that we would make our special sugar cookies. I left it all in the note on the door. By the way, did the Franklin boys apologize for throwing an ice ball through the window? All the pieces were coming together. It was my daughter who took the recipes and made a mess, and the annoying boys across the street that shattered my door window. My house hadn't been broken into after all. Her note just must have fallen into the puddle from the ice ball and gotten ruined, so I didn't see it. I felt a lot better knowing that none of my friends were to blame for this. No, they didn't. But I'll talk to them later. It's 2.5 cups for one batch. And when you add the secret ingredient, do not let them see. Understood? I told her. And please, don't take the Rolodex without asking me again. Sorry, Mom. Will do. Thanks. Love you. Love you too, I said. Before hearing the tone, I came back out to the living room, 20 pounds lighter with that new information. Where were we? I asked. You were telling us why you're just now sharing the news that your house was broken into, Cameron supplied. I looked at my friends, who could be competitive, but deep down would never go this far. And I felt guilty for ever thinking they could have done this. Just to be dramatic, I suppose, I said. With that, they all smiled. Nudging my shoulder, Angel said, "Well, leave it to you." I smiled back and took a bite of my own cookie. Secret recipes or not, I'm a dang good baker. Baby revenge, Shalini. Life in New York seems to be carrying on as usual. Sirens are wailing in the air. The smell of hot dogs and coffee mingled in the air. The noise of the traffic, honks blaring, traffic and pedestrian lights beeping filled the air, along with jazz music coming from shops. Somewhere, I could hear the subway train rumbling into the station, but in every New Yorker's mouth is the latest gossip news. The murder of the infamous supermodel, Laura Myers, who was pushed from her balcony of her penthouse and plunged to death by her ex-boyfriend, Lyle Summers. And few hours ago, Lyle Summers confessed for the murder of Laura Myers. I walked down the sidewalk, bumping onto people, hurrying back to my apartment. On the way, I stop over at the newsstand. On the front page of every magazines and newspapers was the picture of Laura Myers, looking glamorous in a photo shoot on one side, with the picture of Lyle Summers looking gaunt and disheveled, leaving the Manhattan police precinct. I pick up a newspaper and read the front headlines. The supermodel fell on her death. Boyfriend responsible for the murder. The headlines sounds like something out of a crime show. I paid a disgruntled-looking man who owns the newsstand and then shovel the newspaper into my bag before heading towards the subway station. My phone starts ringing, and I groaned as I look at the number on the screen. It was my friend, Jenna, who was calling. "Hey, Jen, I answered, But Jenna broke in. "Shalini, have you heard the news?" Jenna shrieked. "Lara is murdered." "Yeah, it's the talk of the day," I mumbled as I climbed down the stairs to the subway station. "Hey, Jen, I am going to be on subway. I'll call you back." And I cut off the connection before Jenna could reply. I got into the train and then sit next to two women who seemed to be carrying on some excited conversation. Little did I realize, as I sit next to them, that they were, of course, talking about Lara Myers' murder. I, anyway, sit next to them and pretend to be absorbed into my phone. "Oh my God, I can't believe Lara is dead," one of the women exclaimed, as if she was sad that she lost her sister or something. "Rather murdered by her boyfriend Lyle," the other woman snorted. "God, Lara and Lyle are not made for each other. I mean, I don't even know why a glamorous supermodel like Lara would date a nobody like Lyle. After all I heard, he is just a bartender working in some bar in Brooklyn. Did you hear the latest grapevine? Apparently, Lara was having an affair with Joshua Schoenberg." "The Joshua Schoenberg? Like the Senator Schoenberg's nephew? The one who looks so handsome, like a movie star? Like Ian Somerhalder?" "Yeah, that one. That's Lyle was jealous and upset, and that's why he ended up killing Lara." The woman shakes her head like she is disgusted. "About a month ago, at a fashion show, Lara and Lyle got into a heated argument that the security had called in to escort Lyle out. Well, finally, Lara decided to move with someone of her league," the woman replied. "Joshua and Lara would make perfect couple, rather than her and that bartender. I didn't realize that I was gripping my phone so hard that my knuckles were turning white. I had to prevent myself from lashing out at them, but they don't know who I am. To them, I am just a working woman on my way home after a busy day at work. Thankfully, I got off from the train and walked quickly towards my apartment, leaving behind the noise and into a somewhat bum and quiet neighborhood. I fumble with my apartment keys and quickly enter into my room, closing the door behind me. I dump my bag on the sofa and then sit heavily on the sofa and start sobbing. I then wipe my eyes with my hands and then get up, breathing deeply. Slowly, I dialed a number. After about a few rings, she picked it up. "Mama!" I started sobbing into the phone. A few days before, I look at the pregnancy test and see the two lines on the stick. I am pregnant with Joshua Schoenberg's child. Should I feel joyous? I should, but lately I didn't. Joshua was not like the man I used to love. He told me that it was embarrassing to introduce me to his family because I am not white. I am a Sri Lankan. Then why did you date me? I have yelled at him. To my anger, Joshua simply shrugged. Because I enjoyed dating you, he replied with a smirk on his face. And gradually, I realized that he was having an affair, not just with an ordinary woman but with a glamorous supermodel named Lara Myers. He had taken her to places where he would never take me, and had even introduced Laura to his sister, Margot. Tears streamed down on my cheeks as I realize that he doesn't love me the way he does with Laura Myers. Racism is involved in this. I thought Joshua didn't have any racism in him, considering he was half Jewish through his father, whose family emigrated from Europe. But Joshua was too embarrassed to introduce me even to his family, because I was not white. Nonetheless, I decided to call Joshua and tell him the news. With shaking hands, I dial his number. After about 5 minutes, he answered the phone. "What now, Shalini?" he answered gruffly. "I am busy, Joshua," I stammered, and for a moment, my voice was frozen, as if I am unable to speak anything. "Shalini, I don't have time. I thought I gave you money." His tone was impatient. "I am pregnant," I blurted out loudly. There was silence on the other end, and for a moment, I thought Joshua had ended the connection, but I heard his raspy outtake of breath. "Pregnant? What?" "I thought I made it clear," he began. "Please, Joshua, please don't tell me to abort the baby," I pleaded. "The baby can bring us back to..." "Shalini, I don't want a family with you. I have already chosen someone to spend life with," he said gruffly. "Do what you want with the baby. I don't care." And the line went dead. I stared at the phone. "Do what you want with the baby. I don't care." Those words felt like sharp, icy words in my heart. Joshua Schoenberg is heartless and a complete different person from the one I used to love. And then I made a decision. I pick up my bag and set off to find Laura Myers. I am going to ask her to leave Joshua Schoenberg alone, because I will do anything to keep my baby and make Joshua responsible for the baby. After all, he is the father. Off with their heads. "Yes, Mother." I sigh into the line, wrapping the infamous cord around my finger. "Of course, I'm fine." "What? No, it's not like I'm in the States. This is Britain, God damn it." "Mother, no, I think you should lie down for a while. Call Dad as well. He'd fancy a visit from you, I'm sure." And just like that, my hand smashes back on the receiver. Blood, Britain, eh? Who could ever have imagined Olivia, from the apartment up above, would pursue law in England? Well, for starters, certainly not her. A buggy sweeps by my rusted telephone box as I take a single drag on the cigarette laid before me in its little red tin box. Rainwater nearly splashes up on my impeccable outfit, the poor thing. I shake my fist at the driver, but there's no use. The lad's already way off into the distance. What would the world be without Britain? Perhaps every world has some sort of Britain as well. Little men in their fancy outfits, always circling each other with arguments. At least they're nothing like that bloody American man. What was his name again? Nixon, was it? Yes, terrible, terrible people doing amazing things. I've always found it fascinating, you know? My red kitten heels splash against more rainwater. I curse myself silently for not bringing that little red umbrella with me. Perhaps I could pick it up on my way to the office. Their stares don't avoid me as I run by. I can catch those disgusting men from the corner of my eye, all staring. It's not as if I'm putting on a show, is it? Still, I can only imagine what they see. A French woman, plush red lips against fair skin. I even tried to wear my longer crimson dress today. Turns out, that effort proved fruitless. I jump into the office, gasping as the heat blasts me behind the wooden panels. In the background, I can hear softer jazz clashing with news reports from the telly, as if warring between each other. What is it this time? I ask Bonnie, the sharp woman sitting at the desk, or as she urges me to call her, Bonbon. Ridiculous name. Her bleached curls pull up nicely against her dark skin and bright yellow dress. She swears it's from that damn swinging Britain stage we're going through right now. She shrugs, leaning over to stare at the Pixel E screen. Those Beetle kids are going to broke up, she snaps back, leaning into the plush sides of her chair. The corners of her mouth edge up slightly as she stares at the messily done bun in my hair. How do you get your hair like that? Oh, I grin back, picking up the large manila folder before her. Do shut up. What's our next case? It's hard to say. Bonbon plucks a pen from her container, absent-mindedly scribbling on her schedule paper. They ordered us to take up all the spots for the month. All of them? My eyebrows shoot up as I feel my face grow red with anger. The audacity. Who do they think they are to order us around? There are nearly 1 million clients in London, all looking for lawyers. And yet this flash bastard thinks he's important enough to take all her attention. This is the case. She heaves more mundane folders toward me, all packed to the brim with paper. I know. It's a lot. You might even need to help us with this one, I tease. Not my style. Bonnie slumps back. Olivia, some of us girls aren't meant to be smart. We're just supposed to smile and look pretty. Some of us don't get enough funds to go to Oxford either, or travel back and forth from France. I ignore the dig. It's odd how Bonnie and I see ourselves as adults, despite both of us only just being able to drink. Right when I graduated from Oxford, I got accepted into this law firm, the best one in London. Sometimes I wonder if I'd even stay here without the job. Britain is just so dreary. It's quite depressing, especially at first glance. Maybe that's all it deserves. My heels clack down the hallway as I desert the drab lobby. When I finally reach my own personalized office, I feel as if I'm at home. I strut to the opalescent gramophone occupying the corner, placing a thin record upon it. Half my collection is sonata, while the other is all that new style of rock. I believe those critics have begun to call it punk. Whatever the case, it's the only connection I have to my generation. I often find myself discarded in this new, modern era. People believe there is to be so much more, but I can't possibly imagine what could come next. I sit at my small desk, shuffling through the papers that have been so graciously presented to me without haste. How does one look through these documents with such excitement, anyhow? I prefer the thrill of the courtroom to the dual sensation of passing through files and archives. Nevertheless, one needs to begin a task for them to finish it. After nearly 2 hours of reading, Bonnie returns to my office with a cup of tea and the person I'd least like to see right now. Darcy places a hand onto my desk, snatching the tea from Bonnie's hand. "I thought you'd like some tea," she whispers in an accusatory manner. "I see," I groan. "So much so that you grabbed it straight from Bonnie's hand." Darcy snaps her long white fingers. "Leave, pest. Make yourself useful and sort through the files." I all read. Our boss pulls her emerald-colored nails through her platinum blonde hair. Who's to say I didn't mess them up while you were wasting time? Bonnie's gum snaps as she pulls it back in from its bubble. "Course, miss," as her thin legs carry her off down the drab walls. Darcy smashes her fists on my desk before traveling to the gramophone, looking down with distaste. "I find all parts of your music taste disgusting." "Thanks," I mumble, returning to my work. "Now that you've given me some tea and made fun of my music, you can leave. I simply can't figure out how you work with this rock in the background." "First of all," I sigh, throwing down some more papers to the floor. Darcy's eyes widen, but I only shrug. "There's a method to my madness. They taught me some amazing things in your British college, you know?" "Ah, yes," she laments. "The French girl decides to bless us with her knowledge. You know." Darcy dumps more papers onto the floor. "In London, we don't do things with madness. We are intelligent, young women in a time of enlightenment. By the way, I didn't notice you at the Women's March last week. Were you busy?" "Darcy," I reply hastily. "You know I'm all for women's rights. Of course, there are things that I'd rather be doing than marching for them." "What?" she squawks, almost knocking over a clock now leaning dangerously toward the ground. She attempts to upright it, only to leave it tilted on its side. I suppose it's for the best. It's not like I often leave this small office. But then, if we march for it, people ridicule us. I'd rather work on letters to Parliament. And pray tell, where are these letters? I feel my face grow red as I bolt up. There better be a point to this meeting. Darcy backs away from my outburst, sighing. "I wanted to ask you what you thought of the case. Dr. Sherman came into his house late at night I recall the words from the page now lying on the checkerboard carpet. His daughter was still at the secondary school's dance recital, one she only feigned interest in. Darcy raises an eyebrow. I didn't remember anything like that in the case. I only assumed apologies. I'm sorry. Alice just brought a lot of attention to herself. Anyway, where were we? The very beginning, I believe. Precisely. I pretend not to notice the acid in her voice. Dr. Sherman swears that he was missing a certain object from his house. However, the object seems to be missing from the case. That's what I wanted to show you. Darcy nods. She flicks a paper toward my desk, containing only a black and white picture. I squint between the grainy pixels, making out an image. He's really suing for a hat? That hat costs over $100,000. Darcy discloses, snatching the photo back into her brown briefcase. But then, why is he suing for $1 million? I ask, still incredulous. He believes Blake Connery stole the hate. She adjusts her glasses before turning her back on me. Didn't you read the report? Of course I did. She sniffs at the outburst. Mr. Connery went to Sherman's house to go over their last meeting. Something about therapy, I believe. Perhaps this case could help you? Darcy points a pen towards me. You could use some anger management, and with that, the dastardly woman exits stage left, a smug smile still plastered on her face. Is it possible to hit a glass ceiling when your boss is a woman? Still, it's hard for me to believe it. And so you see, the red-faced man before me spits. That's why the hammer of justice must be brought down. My house was ravaged by this madman. I wouldn't dare say it for any of my other patients, but Blake Connery is a psychopath. Well, I can sense his anger rising even higher than mine as I look over the report. When you gave us access to your notes, it didn't seem as if Mr. Connery had any sort of mental illnesses besides his bipolar disorder. Exactly. He stands up, almost sloshing tea on my immaculate red dress. When Darcy had permitted me to interview Dr. Sherman, I'd expected someone much less unhinged. Why is it that the mad are always the most composed? He put on a farce. Dr. Sherman sits back down, crossing his hands. It's almost obvious that he's trying to pull some therapeutic shit on me. Of course, it'd take a lot more than that to faze me. Either Sherman's a bad therapist, or he truly is under a lot of stress from losing his hat. He made me believe that he's not a bloody thief. Let's not jump to accusations about the defendant. I place the papers back into their files to stop him from seeing the work I've already done. It wouldn't do for my client to already know I believe he's insane. Oh? A mousy blonde jumps into the scene, perhaps around 16. Nearly the age I was when I first came to this despicable city. Ignore Papa's ravings. He's just angry still, and rightfully so. For a moment, I'm afraid that he'll slap the girl I've already assumed to be Alice. But he laughs it off. Perhaps she has a therapeutic herself. Despite that fact, something bubbles inside of me as I stare at her in the slightly blue dress. It's my most prized possession. I can make you another, Papa. Alice leans down to hug her father's neck. He smiles, then turns back to me, the joy already wiped off his face. What can I say? I have that effect on some people. I'm sure you can, my butterfly, but we must bring down justice. And with that, I'm immediately done. I've gathered almost useless information, and then it dawns on me. This is what it's going to be like for a straight month, maybe more. This is what I despise about this city. Everything is either gloomy or wonderful. The people, the jobs, the world. But one thing stays the same. In fact, that's the charm of it. Everything is stagnant, orbiting around the world. We all get a chance to be in the spotlight. And sometimes, that's the worst part. I think I have enough information for today, I sigh, placing my tea down with a slow clink. Is it enough to incarcerate the bastard? You're suing him, I remind Dr. Sherman. He's not going to jail? Ha! When I'm done with him, I'm sure that won't be the case. I hired the entirety of the best law firm in the city to work on my case. I can't lose. I'm done arguing with him. On any other day, I'd gladly debate with him until he realizes how much of a damn fool he is. But today, it's almost impossible. The streets are nearly deserted for a crisp May day. I can hear the roars of a crowd in the distance, but there's no one on this street. I check my watch, disappointing myself almost immediately. It's still technically my lunch break, and I haven't found anything useful yet. I'd usually be good and done by now. Instead, I'm stuck in this rabbit hole of a case. No evidence, and I'm surrounded by lunatics. Just my luck, naturally. Eventually, I'm face to face with the source of the crowd's cheering. A band plays upon a large wooden stage, surrounded by small bulbs holding dead string lights. It doesn't take long to find a familiar face. Bonnie? She twists around, staring at me in fear. Her voice comes out way too fast, almost like Dr. Sherman's. Okay, look, don't tell Darcy. I just heard they were playing today, and I'm not telling Darcy, I urge. Anyway, they're pretty good. Better than anyone else on the radio, at least. What's their name? The Hatters. Bonnie shrugs. I know. It's weird. No? I shake my head. More like a coincidence. Ugh. She hangs her tan arms around my neck, jumping to the dark, sporadic beat. Are you still on that case? Well, Bonnie. My voice drifts off before I can dish out a biting comment. Wait. How do you know about the case? She blushes deep red. I might have read it. You did? I laugh incredulously, fixing it immediately after. No, I'm just surprised. That's great. I could use some help. But what made you decide it? Well, Bonnie shrugs. I just wanted to help out, I guess. I'm always just the girl behind the desk, the one with a smile. I saw how you stood up to Darcy, and her thoughts are interrupted by perhaps the cutest man eclipsing the world. A guitar held in his dark hands. His curls are covered in a thin sheen of sweat as he smiles toward us. It takes me a moment and a jab from Bonnie to realize it's me he's smiling at. Hey, he flashes us a gleaming grin, tipping a tall top hat, clashing directly with his leather and chains. Name's Blake, and just like that, the conversation is ruined. No? The smile fades a little as the band on stage drifts off. I guess he's their central power source. I can't understand. I blush profusely. No, it's not you. I just mean, you're Blake Connery, I assume. Bonnie's eyes flash with fear at the notion. I mean, I know it's random. It's mad, but it's so me. Was it fate that brought us together? He brushes past Bonnie, but for once, I don't see her angry that a man is ignoring her. I can see the emotions warring in her mind. On one side, we know that I'm going to have to possibly rob him of all his money. On the other hand, he's hot. You know my name. Well, I pull out the manila folder, reaching for the picture displaying him I grabbed from Dr. Sherman's office. I also have your file. He doesn't display the reaction I expected. He leans back, staring down at his watch. You're working for Sherman, huh? That seems to be the case. So, Bonbon leans back, grabbing her bright yellow purse. I should probably. She leaves her bleach blonde curls bouncing in the wind. Can I just tell you? I try to imitate his smile, only to completely cringe. That man is clearly insane. That gives him a laugh. It's his daughter, Alice? Now I have to stifle my chuckle. But she's innocent. That's just what she wants you to believe. Say, how about you stick with me, and you win this case for me? I have heaps of knowledge for you. And I suppose you know this because you're an expert lawyer? Dr. Sherman holds all his meetings in his house, Blake recites. I was there lawfully, and I never stole his hat. But we don't have the security cameras. I beg your pardon, Sherman has cameras. And even if he won't give you access, I will. And you lawfully took these? Ya got me there. Blake stares sheepishly down toward the folder. I have connections. And that isn't shady at all. If you've been having a bad time in this city, it's because you haven't been living like me. I know it all. That doesn't answer my question, genius. Look, Connery stares back at the clock again. Are you on a break? I have about an hour or two before I need to return to the office. Sherman cut the meeting short. Have lunch with me. I promise that by the end of it, you'll be swayed to my side. And what does that mean? He produces a wallet, holding up a wad of cash. Whatever Sherman paid you will look like a joke compared to what I can give you. I'll even give you more than just money. Okay. I blush. Let's just lead the way, gladly. Miss Olivia. Blake flashes me another dangerous smile. I believe this will be the beginning of a great union. How to rob a library. Harry was ready. Harry hated books. The plan was simple. If he robbed the library, there would be no books to read. No books equals no library. Even if the library wanted to buy new books, they would have no place to put them. Phase 10 of the plan was to burn the library to the ground. The mission was ready to go. Phase 1. Knock out any guards. You will need fry pan and 2 ropes. The guards wouldn't stand a chance. There were only 2 of them anyway. What harm could they do? The answer to that was a lot of damage. The guards had been trained in the martial arts, so if you stood in their way, you were burnt toast. Good thing Harry wasn't bred, or the mission would be even more difficult. He slowly crept through the bushes, holding his fry pan in one hand and the rope in the other. Soon he saw a light getting close. A guard was coming. Piece of cake, Harry thought. This was going to be fun. Ding! The guard fell down to the floor, so he was tied to a tree. 1 down, 1 to go. Slowly, Harry crept out of the bushes and looked around. Where was the guard? "Hey, you! Stop right there!" called a voice from behind him. Time for real fun. Harry swung the fry pan through the air, and with a thunk, it came to rest on the guard's head. Thud. Time for Phase 2 of the plan. Phase 2. Disable the security cameras. You will need the pickaxe to be sure that no one found him out tomorrow. Harry would have to hide a lot of evidence, like knocking out the guards. All he had to do was smash all the cameras around him. There were about 20 of them scattered around the place. Number 1. Harry threw the pickaxe through the air. Bullseye. Number 2. It spotted him before he saw it, but no evidence remains now. Number 3, 4, 5, 6. Too easy. Number 7. Whoever designed this must have thought that 1-year-olds were the only criminals around. The rest were too easy to be recorded. Time for Phase 3. Phase 3. Shoot a window on the top floor of the library. You will need a gun. Harry took a deep breath. He got 1 shot at this. That was all. If he missed, he would have to reshoot. Then it would be more likely people had heard the shots and come to invigilate. Ready, aim, fire. Bang. Smash. The shot couldn't have been better. The window shattered instantly. Time for Phase 4. Phase 4. Climb up the library. Don't do with adult supervision. You will need a rope. Harry took a deep breath. It was time to climb. Using all of his force, he threw the rope up to the smashed window. Then he began to climb up the library. Error in the plan. It has recently rained, and the building is now very slippery. There was no safety gear added to the list. A slip will result in being in a coffin. Harry was about halfway up the 10-meter-high building when the error came into place. He tried to take another step. He slipped and fell. Luckily, he grabbed the rope just in time, so he got away with just a few scratches. So much for a library being a safe place for kids, he thought. Finally, he reached the top. It was time for Phase 5. Phase 5. Take down the librarian. The librarian will never leave. Its post, not even after hours. You will need glue and the remaining rope. Harry looked around, knowing the librarian could be anywhere, watching him. He got to work covering the floor with glue. It was going to be a sticky trap to fall into. Time to do the fun bit. Make noise. One thing you should know about librarians is they hate noise. Shh is one of their favorite words to use. So, noise would be the bait to the trap. Harry counted to 3, and then, boom. He rejected at the top of his voice. A second later, he heard footsteps coming towards him. "I'm over here!" He cried. The librarian turned around and scowled. "Come here, boy." She yielded, taking a step forward. Squelch. She soon found herself glued to the floor. Now it was time to tie her up, just for the fun of it. Time for Phase 6. Phase 6. Rob the books. You will need a sack. Harry did that immediately, so I won't record that. Phase 7. Get ready to set the fire. You will need some of the stolen goods and petrol. Fun was rising in Harry's soul. Time to get ready for the fire. He walked up to the tied librarian and grinned. Then he ripped some of the books to shreds. Then he sprinkled them all around the room. That was just the beginning. Time for the petrol. Harry ran around the room, pouring it everywhere. The librarian looked furious. That made Harry feel a sense of achievement. Phase 8. Make sure the librarian won't get killed in the fire. You won't need anything. Harry walked up to the librarian. "I'm sorry, miss, but I'm going to have to throw you out the window," he said. The librarian looked furiously at him. "Did you not know that a librarian never leaves its post?" She screamed angrily. Oh well, thought Harry, so be it. Phase 8 has been cancelled. Phase 9. Make sure you can escape easily. You will need a safe place. Harry looked around the room. He couldn't go through the window because the rope would catch fire. He couldn't just stay here, though. He had to do something. It was then that Harry realized that there was a door to the library, so he could just escape through it. Too bad it can't be a bit dramatic, he thought. Phase 10. Light the fire. You will need the matches. Flick. Harry struck the match. Then he walked over to the petrol. Then he set the fire. He now had just 3 minutes to escape. Fire was already everywhere the eye could see. It was time for the next phase. Phase 11. Escape the library. You will need lots of luck. Without looking back at the screaming librarian, Harry raced downstairs. The fire chased him the whole way. It didn't stop until Harry wasn't out of the library. By now, the building was alight in the darkness, so the firemen and police would be here. Phase 12. Throw the sack of books in the river. You will need the sack of books. Harry raced down to the cold, dark river. It was time to get rid of the books. Without hesitation, he threw the books into the murky depths. He smiled as he watched them go. Phase 13. Act innocent. Sirens wailed as the police came to the scene. Time to do the job. Harry walked right past the police, and they didn't notice. Who would expect a kid to break into a library and murder someone anyway? For more information on how to do damage, please go to your local library, if it hasn't been burnt down, and find more of our how-to guides. Murder at Kasserine Pass. Murder at Kasserine Pass. The Bo-Chebka Road, deep inside the Kasserine Pass, narrowed to little more than a camel track, along a dry riverbed and steep cliffs. Rooted in the pale sand, a grove of palm trees jutted out from the ground as if thrown down and forgotten long ago. The remnants of the U.S. 26th Regimental Combat Team used the shade of the palm trees to dig their foxholes. Covered in sand and blisters, men hacked until the exposed roots of the palm trees aggravated their progress. Collapsing, exhausted, they lay where they fell, swollen tongues aching for water. Lieutenant Myers walked among his men, giving words of encouragement, and promised water would arrive when teams returned from Ain Boudrias up the road. As an officer, he thanked and encouraged his men for their hard fight against the Germans. He hoped fresh troops, supplies, and ammunition would arrive by the next morning. But he couldn't make promises. Around 2 in the morning, a mule train arrived with water, and Lieutenant Myers saw every man drank his fill. Some even vomited after they drank too greedily. Others, familiar with working in the heat, sipped slowly and intentionally. Lieutenant Myers lay down in a foxhole, as exhausted as the rest, and drifted off to sleep. At 04:30, Sergeant Thicket woke the lieutenant for him to walk rounds once again. walking from foxhole to foxhole. He leaned over and checked his men. In the dim light, low in the eastern sky, his outline became visible among the tall palm trees. Approximately 05 o'clock, a single shot rang out far to the left of his position. Lieutenant Myers clutched his chest and dropped to the ground. Confused men, roused by the shot, began returning fire into the vast, empty valley in front of them, thinking they were under attack. Less than a minute later, the firing stopped, and the medics pronounced Lieutenant Myers dead. Captain Williams' Task Force. Welvert, February 21st, 1943. Criminal Investigations Division, North Africa. I surveyed the ground where Lieutenant Myers lay after he'd been shot. It's possible a sniper took advantage of the early morning light, but further examination of the body suggests the shot came from much closer. The bullet struck the lieutenant on the upper left side of his chest. Damage to the heart and lungs, terminal. Some witnesses report hearing one shot, while others heard 2 or 3. The additional shots could have been an echo or edgy trigger fingers, as reported to me. Everyone began furring into the valley below. Furring stopped in less than a minute. No further casualties. Witnesses report the shot sounded nearest the last foxhole in the line, manned by Staff Sergeant Culver Anderson, Private First Class Andrew Taylor, and Private Jacob Clark. Interviews to follow. Suspect, Staff Sergeant Culver Anderson. Staff Sergeant Anderson. Witness say they heard a gunshot this morning from your foxhole around 500, said Captain Williams. Did you fire that shot? Captain Williams said, challenging him. No, sir. I heard a shot and thought the Germans were attacking, so I turned and looked around for them. I didn't see anyone, so I jumped out of my foxhole and ran along the line and told everyone to stop firing. Sergeant Anderson leaned forward, waving his hands in innocence. We are already low on ammunition, and we'd need it later if the Germans did attack, he said. Were you aware that the shot fired killed an officer? Asked Captain Williams. No, sir. Not until the firing died down. Rumor spread it might be an officer. I found out later, just like everyone else. Sergeant Anderson said. Were you alone in your foxhole, Sergeant? No, sir. There were 2 men with me, Private Taylor and Private Clark. They were sleeping, sir. I had the last watch, said Sergeant Anderson. Are you sure neither of them were awake and slipped away? Then maybe they fired the shot? Asked the captain. I'm sure of it, sir. I thought the shot came from behind me, and when I looked, I couldn't see anyone. It's possible a sniper hid on the hillside next to us. The sound of the shot may have been further beyond that, but these canyons are pretty steep. The explanation sounded plausible, but Captain Williams still didn't believe it came from the enemy. Captain Williams pivoted one last time and pointed a finger at Sergeant Anderson. Sergeant Anderson, don't play games with me. Our witness said it came from your foxhole. It had to be you, Private Taylor or Private Clark. Which one of you did it? Sir, I don't know who fired the shot or where it came from. All I know is, while I stood my post, I heard a shot. Sergeant Anderson said, more agitated than before. Captain Williams knew men like Sergeant Anderson. These were the men who would do all they could to protect a green recruit. He knew they'd cover for the new guys who were gun-shy or over-eager to shoot. The possibility of an inexperienced soldier with an itchy trigger finger shooting the lieutenant thinking he saw the enemy. It was possible. He knew he'd never get a confession out of this man. Men like this were a rare breed in the Army. Sergeant Anderson, we've been at Chebka Pass all of 18 hours. Everyone's tired after yesterday's fallback. We lost a lot of good men, and stragglers are still coming in across the line. These things happen. People get tired or confused, and no one really knows who they're fighting with every day. Is it possible you, or a man with you, mistook the lieutenant as an enemy soldier this morning? No, sir. I'd just met these men last night. I'd have known if anything were wrong, and nothing looked out of sorts. If there were anything, I'd have told you, said Sergeant Anderson. That will be all, Sergeant. You're dismissed, and I'll be in touch if I need you. Captain Shugart is taking over your company. Thank you, sir. Suspect. Private. First class. Andrew Taylor. Private First Class Taylor. I am Captain Williams with the CID. Do you know what the CID is? Said the captain. Yes, sir. The CID is the Criminal Investigations Division of the United States Army. Sir, very good soldier. You're young to be a PFC. You've done well in the Army. I expect you'll be a corporal before long. Yes, sir. I served in junior ROTC in high school. They gave me a bump in rank when I enlisted, said Private Taylor. Wow, junior ROTC. You have the makings of an officer. Do you think you will try to be an officer someday? Asked the captain. Well, geez, sir, I don't know. I've never thought about it much until the war started. I thought I'd have to go to college first, said Private Taylor. No, of course not, son. Men of all ranks get promoted to second lieutenant. They're called field promotions. Have you ever heard of those? Well, yes, sir. I've heard of them, but I thought you needed to do something brave. I didn't think I've done anything brave yet. Well, Corporal, it takes a special soldier, someone with real leadership, to get promoted in the ranks, especially to the rank of officer. Captain Williams called him a higher rank to gauge Private Taylor's reaction. I'm only a private first class, sir. I have to wait a few more months to be a corporal. See, there you go. Honesty. Honesty is an outstanding trait to have as a soldier. I think we should make honesty a prime factor in the field commissioning program. Don't you? Said the captain. Well, I think so, sir. I think it would be important, said Private Taylor. That's good, soldier. I'm really glad you said that. And that brings me around to a question I have for you. Did you hear the gunshot this morning? Well, yes, sir. I heard it. Do you know where it came from? I'm not sure I know where it came from. It sounded nearby, but I couldn't be sure. I took the first watch and fell asleep around 2 a.m. You were sleeping. You had a rough day yesterday, and we lost a lot of good men. We lost another man this morning. What do you know about that? Yes, sir. It was a hard day yesterday. Private Taylor rubbed at his eyes as if trying to block out the images. I heard someone was shot, but I don't know much about it. Was it a sniper, sir? That's the rumor. Is that why I'm here this morning? Asked Private Taylor. Yes, Corporal. I mean Private Taylor. We lost a good man this morning. Lieutenant Myers died around 0500. The rumor is it came from a location near where you were sleeping. It's an unfortunate way to have a vacancy, but Lieutenant Myers died because of that shooting. Now we have a company without a lieutenant. We have a poor dead man who will never know justice. The truth will have to come out someday. If we could solve this mystery right away, things may just fall into place for the right person. Maybe even a new second lieutenant could rise through the ranks. What do you think about that? Private Taylor wiggled in his seat. He looked excited or uncomfortable. It was hard for the captain to tell. Honestly, sir, I woke up when the shooting started. I don't know where the shot came from, he said. Thank you, Private. I'll let you go, and if I need anything more, can I count on you to be honest with me? Yes, sir. Private Jacob Clark. Private Clark. I am Captain Williams, the lead investigator for the Criminal Investigative Division. Witnesses say you were near the location of the shot fired this morning that killed Lieutenant Myers. Is that correct? Yes, sir. I heard the shot. It was only one shot, said Private Clark. Do you know who fired the shot? Asked Captain Williams. Sir? Said Private Clark. The shot. Did you see who fired the shot? Asked the captain. I remember nothing. It all happened so fast, said the private. If you knew who it is, are you aware it is a crime to withhold information about the person involved? Yes, sir. Are you saying you know who fired the shot? Asked the captain. Sir, no, sir. It all happened so fast. Did you know that covering for someone is also a crime? Maybe you know who fired the shot, and you just don't want to say. It's called being an accomplice to murder, said the captain. The kid looked dumbstruck. I didn't know that, sir. Honestly, it all happened so fast. Did you also know there is a second crime being committed by the killer if they are threatening a subordinate to covering up a murder? It's called retribution. If someone you know is telling you they would hurt you or kill you for telling the truth about this killing, then creating fear of retribution is a crime. I didn't know that, sir. Yes, Private Clark. It is a crime, and a very serious one. We do not look kindly upon those who threaten retribution to subordinates. If you know anything, you are free to tell me. I will make sure you are safe from the one threatening you, and I'll have them removed immediately. Is there anything you'd like to tell me, soldier? I'm sorry, sir. I don't know what you mean. I was in my foxhole this morning when I heard this rifle shot, and I jumped. I don't remember anything after that. Then everyone started shooting, said Private Clark. The young man looked sullen and weak. He slouched in the chair, staring into the distance, 100 miles away. Pacing back and forth across the tent, Captain Williams looked into the private eyes. He'd seen this before, after a fight. Unfortunately, the captain felt each man knew something he did or didn't want to say. Confessions didn't come easy. Captain Williams thought about a case 6 weeks ago where a junior enlisted and a captain fought behind a bar in Morocco. The enlisted man should have been court-martialed and the officer reprimanded. Turns out the two men knew each other from high school, and they fought over a girl they both knew. Neither confessed to starting the fight, and no witnesses came forward. The answer stared him in the face, but the guys covered for each other. Captain Williams believed the same thing might happen here. He released the private and stood at the tent flap, trying to piece together everything he knew. The men on the line were all lying to him. That much he knew. Kasserine Pass, February 19th, 1943, as Rommel's 10th Panzer Division plowed through the defenses, covering the Kasserine Pass. The 26th Armored Brigade and the 26th Combat Team dug in along the canyons, running west towards Thala, Tunisia. The Americans put up stiff resistance, then withdrew. Hours of gunfire and hundreds of dead and dying littered the sand in their brutal retreat. Around 3,300 Americans were killed or wounded, and over 3,000 were taken prisoner. On the southern flank, Lieutenant Myers and the men of the 26th Combat Team held on as long as they could. "Lieutenant Myers, we need to get those men out of those holes and behind the tanks," yelled Sergeant Anderson. "Sergeant Anderson, you will leave those men where they are. They are the only thing between Rommel and Algeria. Do you understand?" "But sir, they are getting massacred out there. I just saw 3 men get run over in those shallow holes. They have to pull back." "Sergeant Anderson, I will not tell you again. See to your men, that is an order." As Sergeant Anderson left the lieutenant, his anger fumed. He ran towards his line and did what he could to check on his men. Those men left, held out as long as they could, as the Germans moved closer and closer. He knew they couldn't hold the line. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Myers carried armfuls of ammunition to his men until he ran out. His radio man died early in the fight, and the 2 men who followed already wounded. Grabbing the radio, he jumped into a crater and found a soldier lying on the ground. 2 men lay beside him, already dead, as this one stared into the sky. "Soldier, return fire," said Lieutenant Myers. "I can't, sir." The words came out in a hopeless tone. "I'm out of ammunition. We all are. That's how they died. They just ran out. Then they got shot." The exhaustion was clear. The battle raged on, and everyone fought on as best they could. "Lieutenant, what do we do?" he said pleadingly. "Private, what is your name?" he asked. "Private Clark, sir." "Private Clark, You are now my radio man. Get this thing working and listen for orders. Do you understand, Private? He said. Yes, sir. He struggled to talk from lack of water. He moved slowly, but he made it to the young lieutenant's side and grabbed the radio. No sooner than he'd picked up the handle, and he heard the words. I say again, pull back, pull back. Lieutenant, they ordered us to pull back. The words came out in a half shout. Without hesitation, Lieutenant Myers gave the signal for everyone to pull back. The Germans held nothing back that day. They took Kasserine Pass, and they intended to keep it. By nightfall, every man, not killed or wounded, pulled back to Buchebka Pass. The Germans came from the east, and Sergeant Anderson guided his men out of the fight. Lieutenant Myers directed them south and along the cliff walls. By midnight, they were digging in and waiting for reinforcements. Private, get over here and start digging. 2 men per foxhole, all along this line. The rest of you follow with me, said Sergeant Anderson. Sarge, when do you think we'll get some water? Asked a soldier. I'm working on it. Even if I have to take the lieutenant's canteen myself, all along the line. The remaining 110 men dug in and waited for anything that looked like help. Tank and truck noises echoed through the canyon. Everyone felt on edge. Sarge, what do you think happened today? Asked Private Taylor. We suffered a loss today, kid. His expression mild and disappointed. We suffered a big loss today. Sergeant Anderson kept watch as Private Taylor and Private Clark dug the foxhole. Private Clark fell silent and moved at half the speed of Private Taylor. Private Taylor nodded at the sergeant. They both looked at the young man, struggling to keep sand from falling back into the hole. A look of concern and understanding crossed the sergeant's face. Taking the shovel from Private Clark, he began digging and let the man rest. He finished the hole and told the others to get some sleep. Each man took a 2-hour watch, leaving Private Clark last. Midway through, around 500, a shot rang out. Private, what did you just do? Asked Sergeant Anderson. He wouldn't let us leave. We were there all day. He had to die. The rest of the men opened fire. Then the shooting died down. We can't go back. We can't. Tears left dusty tracks down his face. The poor boy cried. What do we do, Sarge? Asked Private Taylor. We keep our mouths shut. That's what we do. I'll send him back to the aid station when they get here. He's done. The author created the thoughts and characters. This is a story of fiction. The events related to World War II have some factual information, but most details are from the author's imagination.